I apologize. I'm a bit of the kind of guy that can't stay still behind I cannot stand still behind a podium like this for very long, or I go a little bit crazy. So hopefully you'll be okay with me moving around. And I've never presented in front of a Jumbotron before. So I hope all my pictures are in enough high def it does my presentation justice. But I will start and say what an honor it is to be here at UVU. We have a very good relationship with SkyWest and UVU. We're trying to cultivate a stronger relationship given some of the business needs we have for talent. I will also tell you that I did experience what I think you guys experience every day with parking this morning. I was here plenty early, and it was tough, but I will give you a bit of advice, at least from the school that I graduated from, which he mentioned that I won't, that if you have parking tickets through your educational career, you have to pay them before they give you your diploma. I found that out the hard way when the recruiters were not getting my diploma before I was interviewing, but I learned that lesson. That's lesson number one, so take notes. Pay your parking tickets before you graduate. So what I want to do real quick today is essentially walk you through a little bit of what my experience has been in the business world. It's an interesting course. I love the state of Utah. I grew up in Cedar City, Utah. My wife grew up in Cedar City, Utah, and went to BYU, graduated. And let me give you a little history of how I got to where I am. This picture kind of shows exactly how I got there. There's this accounting firm from a long time ago called Arthur Andersen. And many of you may know what it is, but it's been gone for about 15 years, about 14 and a half years. I worked for that firm for about 5.5 years. It was a great experience. They worked me to death. That's the way it goes in life. To get good experience, someone is usually going to work you to death. And after about 5.5 years, I was ready to do something different. I was doing a lot of, this was back in long time ago, 1999, when the dot-com rage was going on, and we were doing IPOs and mergers and all that kind of stuff, and then that busted. And I was ready to go to a scenario where I had more of a stable future, if you will. I wanted to go to something I thought was going to be around a while, and I had SkyWest as a client, and I loved what my predecessor, Jerry Atkin, had done. He had been CEO for SkyWest for 42 years. And there's a reason why a guy can stay as CEO for 42 years, and he has all of that. The problem is try being the guy that replaces a guy that's been CEO for 42 years. So it's a tough job for me. But in 2001 is when I started to look at something different. And when I went down to SkyWest, I started at SkyWest about in April of 2001. I left my family up in Provo Canyon because I was commuting to Salt Lake with Arthur Andersen. I left them there, and I said, look, let me try this out for 5 or 6 months to see how it goes. So we gave it a shot. On September the 7th of 2001, we made the decision to move the family down to St. George and really commit to the airline industry. This was on September 7th, 2001. We have the U-Haul all out in the garage. My wife is spending the weekend unpacking the boxes. The Tuesday after the weekend, on September 11th, 2001, I'm ready to get on an airplane to go to Chicago to do some negotiations with United. And just as I'm about ready to, I'm in the office gathering some things up, just as I'm about ready to go get on the airplane, I get this panic call from my wife. I had no idea what had happened yet. And you can tell, the wife, trembling voice on the other end, she's going, are you on an airplane? I'm like, I'm not on an airplane yet. She goes, are you watching this? I'm like, am I watching what? She goes, find a TV, call me back. And that image right there is the first image that I saw. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just moved my family down. We haven't even unpacked the boxes, and this happened to this industry. And my wife kind of sat back and goes, that night, after we kind of worked through it, I wasn't getting on a plane because the entire world was shut down. We had this cool tape at SkyWest on September 11th where we have this screen that you can see, roughly 3,000 airplanes flying real time throughout the United States, and we can fast forward it, and in about 20 seconds, you can see all the dots disappear, and there are no dots across the United States. That's what happened on September 11th. We have LA Airport there. That is the only time the LA Airport has ever been shut down since it's been opened. There's been a couple of terrorist threats and events in certain terminals of the LA Airport. They still kept the rest of the airport running. 9/11 really redefined the entire industry. And that's right when I got in. It was a very, very nerve-wracking situation. That night my wife calls and says, "Do you think Arthur Andersen will take you back?" And I did not want to go back to public accounting. And thank goodness, because it was only about 3 weeks after 9/11 that the whole Enron thing exploded on Arthur Andersen, and within about 6 weeks after that, Arthur Andersen wasn't even there. So there's a little bit of luck involved in life. And I'm not saying I'm a great person or I do the right things, but typically if you're doing the right things and living the way you're supposed to live, good things are going to happen to you, and that's one thing that happened. Let me just, before I get into some leadership principles, give you a little background, a little bit about SkyWest and the industry. These are the outstanding people that we get to do business with that are employed by the federal government on a daily basis. I don't know of an industry that has more federal agencies that are looking at us on a daily, annual, quarterly, or monthly basis than the airline industry. And in my, look, I'm not going to bash the process or anything. I think that there's some very valid reasons why they should be. But this is, we talk about the deregulation of the airline industry back in the late 80s. I can tell you whatever was deregulated back in the late 80s, we're back with this stuff in a very, very big way. That's just kind of part of life in our industry, and it's becoming a little bit more part of life in everybody's industry, so let's evolve and move forward with that stuff. Okay, these are a couple of cool slides. I'm a huge cycling fan. Doesn't look like it the way I used to be, but I'm a huge cycling fan. But I want to talk about what happens in the airline industry. The chance of having a safety event on an airline is a 1 in 7 million. 1 in 7, that's your odds of having a safety event in the airline industry. I'm a huge cyclist. Okay, I love cycling. I'm going to come back to this picture here in just a little bit. But the chances of me being injured or even killed on my bike are significantly greater than what they are in the aviation industry. The aviation industry is one of the safest, literally one of the safest industries when you consider, not even consider what we do, but when you just consider applying it to all the other industries that there is in existence. And there's a lot of reasons why, and I'll get into those in just a little bit. But it's incredible because I'm not standing here in front of you telling you about a cool product that we made, or that I invented something, or that I had this innovative idea to do something different. What we do with SkyWest being 45 years old this year is that we do something, okay? We take people from point A to point B. It's a very cool process. Some of the coolest part of my job, we have a couple of guys here in some pilot uniforms. Some of the coolest part of my job is that I get the ability, I have clearance to sit up in the jump seat with a couple of pilots. And I get up there sometimes and I just have to tell the pilots, I have to tell the pilots, this is so cool. Why do we pay you to do this? I will tell you that the coolest things I've seen in my life, I've seen out of an airplane. And so that's really what our passion and the 20,000 employees that we have a passion for, is to do some very, very cool things with what people want to do, but do it that safe. Here's our structure. There's SkyWest Incorporated, and there is SkyWest Airlines. We have ExpressJet Airlines, and then we also have a SkyWest leasing company. So we own 2 airlines. The one you're probably most familiar with is SkyWest. We fly SkyWest out here on the West Coast. ExpressJet mostly flies out on the East Coast. Then we have a leasing company that owns and holds a whole lot of airplanes that we own and fly ourselves, and some that we let other people fly throughout the world. So that's kind of the makeup of our corporate structure. When I got there in 2001, this is what our map looked like. These were the places that we flew. Okay, mostly out of Salt Lake, up and down the West Coast, a little bit out of Dallas, just starting out of Denver. Today, it looks like that. Okay, so today we have about 3,200 daily departures. Do the math on about 3,200 daily departures. That means that we have a flight that is taking off about every 20 seconds. So in the time frame of this, presentation I give, we'll have 150 flights take off. And the logistics of doing all that stuff, look, there are so many people that are smarter than me at SkyWest that knows more about logistics. It is an absolute, it's a science and an art, and our people, I will tell you, are absolutely the very best at that. And we have organizations and operations all over the United States. Our biggest challenges are in Chicago and New York, where the weather just raises havoc with wanting to fly an airplane. We fly to very cool places like Aspen and Jackson Hole, where it's very technical and there's these big rocks surrounding the airport, but we pride ourselves on being able to do that stuff better than anybody else. Okay, here's our model, just in a nutshell real quick. I'm trying to keep track of time because these things kind of go by fast. Our model is that we don't charge anybody a fare ourselves, okay? Our model is that these 4 major carriers, United, Delta, American, and Alaska, those 4 major carriers, we sign contracts with them to fly from point A to point B. We basically give them our structure of where our maintenance facilities are. We give them our fleet. We give them some of the dynamics of what we can do in certain geographical areas, and they put together a schedule for us, and they pay us money to fly with their paint on our airplane to fly from destinations like throughout Salt Lake City. They'll pay us a certain amount of money to fly from Salt Lake to San Francisco. I'm not worried about what the fares are doing. They control the entire distribution model of how fares are, the credit cards and everything, and collecting the fares from the customers and the passengers. I don't have to worry about fuel costs, which is big. Fuel costs has gone up about $10 a barrel in the last 2 to 3 weeks. I watch it, but I don't have tons of anxiety about it if I had to pay for all that fuel. They reimburse me for the fuel. My main responsibility in my business model is to have outstanding people that are willing and able to deliver better than anybody else, take care of their passengers, make sure we do it on time, and by far the most important thing is to do it safely. And our responsibility is to tell these partners if they want us to do something that is out of, out of the norm from a safety perspective, or where they want to fly with a certain aircraft, it's our responsibility and job to say we don't feel comfortable doing that. That's why we have such an outstanding safety record. Not that they ask us to do weird things, but we do manage a relationship that we make sure that the number one thing that we do is continue with this outstanding safety record that we have. Okay, that's enough of the business model. This is our fleet. So we fly essentially 5 different aircraft types. Some of them have dual class. When we say dual class, they have a first class configuration. Some have first class, business, and coach. But to be honest with you, what we do is we do exactly what those 4 partners want us to do. We find the airplanes they want us to fly. They decide where the markets are and the frequency that they want to fly. We engage the manufacturers, and we're the ones that maintain the aircraft. Every night, you guys may, if you've come through Salt Lake City, you can see our hangar over there. One of the coolest things that I love, besides being in the jump seat with pilots, is to go to a maintenance base from about 9 o'clock at night to about 6 o'clock in the morning and watch all these airplanes come in. Because the name of the game is to get these things flying as much as you possibly can during the day. And at night, you need about 8 hours with that airplane at night to go back through and do whatever you have to do. And we have very sophisticated systems that track we call it the health of the airplane. Meaning we try to have a predictive model where we know enough about all 5 of these airplanes that as we maintain them, we have databases that will allow us to actually, in some instances, particularly our newest one, which is the one on the top, predict when it may have a problem with something. That's something that's extremely fun to deal with and extremely innovative. And at the same time, when you go into like Salt Lake City and we bring 30 aircraft into there and all the mechanics show up, watch what they do. And then even more importantly, watch it about 5 o'clock in the morning when they've finished all of the maintenance on the airplanes, see what it takes to get them all back to the gates at a place like Salt Lake City. We have big maintenance bases in Salt Lake, in Colorado Springs. We just built another big one in Boise, in Chicago. And it's just literally one of the coolest things that I get to see is what our people do and how they execute day in and day out. Let me just briefly touch on this particular aircraft at the very, very top. This aircraft at the very top here is our newest airplane and is probably as technologically advanced as anything that anybody is making today. And when I say technologically advanced, it has a lot of things in it that assist the pilots to make sure it's, the health of the aircraft is being communicated to the pilots and the mechanics. It does a lot of things with fuel. Literally the innovation. General Electric is who makes the engines on most of these aircraft. But on that aircraft right there, General Electric has done a fantastic job of making sure that the carbon footprint from these types of aircraft are absolutely cutting edge. And it's funny because I've been to the GE facility where they make aircraft engines. And GE spends an enormous amount of money just researching how you tweak that engine to save, a 0.03 factor of fuel over an hour. And it's just absolutely amazing to see these very sophisticated engineers spend so much time and effort trying to make something as simple as an airplane be so much more efficient. Airplanes are made significantly more out of carbon fiber now. They're lighter. There's a lot more electronics. There's a lot more backup systems. And when you talk about innovation in our world today, it's not just the internet. It is the things that companies are applying, especially with Embraer and Bombardier, who manufacture the aircraft. Just even the shape of the wings, where are certain things on the aircraft. It's really, really incredible to see, some of the social responsibility we have in our industry and how the manufacturers and everybody's responding to that. We have an entire fleet of 660 aircraft. That's a lot of airplanes. We'll talk in just a minute that about 2 years ago, we had 150 more. There's some reasons why we're shrinking the fleet drastically. It has to do with our business model and profitability. But with 3,200 departures and 660 aircraft, we're probably ranked about the third or fourth largest airline in the United States. And the airlines in the United States are some of the biggest ones in the world. So it's a very, very big task. And I'm going to go back to it again and again. To see what our people do with that type of fleet and those type of departures, you really, really have to have the right people doing the right stuff. Okay, there we go. Let's start in with it. I would think that the number one thing that I could say relative, particularly what I've experienced in my career and what we see at SkyWest and all of our entities at SkyWest is you really have to find the best people and you have to take care of those people. There's an executive on my staff that says, look, our people are so good that without us giving them almost any instruction, they have an inherent passion for flying and being on time and being safe. Our people will naturally get us into, quote unquote, the red zone without us really even saying anything. And you really have to have people that are that good. Now, it takes a lot of coordination to take it across the goal line and that type of stuff, but our people are, we make no secret or no bones about it. Our people are the best in the industry. We look for the best in the industry. That's part of the reason why we're, continuing to partner with UVU for professionals to work at our company, because, we know where to find some extraordinarily good talent, and we know what the value of that is. Other carriers don't have the same, I'm not going to say they don't have the same quality of people, but the value that we put on our people, I think, is significantly one of our better competitive advantages compared to what other people do. Okay, let me talk about our people just a little bit more. This is the makeup of our folks. We have nearly 20,000 aviation professionals, okay? About 7,100 pilots, about 5,000 flight attendants, 3,500 maintenance personnel, 2,600 ground operations personnel, and then from dispatch and management, about another 1,500. Some of the things that we like to do is because, this industry goes like this. It is hot and cold. If you go back and look at the airline industry, it comes and goes. And part of our challenge is to try to make sure that we can take care of people in such a volatile environment. Part of it is being very creative and working face-to-face with them. We don't want to, I rarely want to go have a conversation with employees with an attorney in the room on either side. The sooner that we can get to really what the transparent concerns of the company and the transparent concerns of the employees and the people are, the faster we can make a connection in a business model that has sustainability. What we have found with our people is not so much that, people work because of pay. There's no question about that. But beyond pay, there are some very, very important factors. One of the ones that's most important to people is stability and predictability. people want to know that they're going to work for a company that's not going to go away. A lot of that weighs on us to make the right decisions to where our model can be more predictable, but that requires a significant amount of communication with our employees and a significant amount of transparency with our employees, which quite candidly we think is a very, very paramount way of making sure that you take care of your people. We're not talking just about the economics of taking care of people. It's how they're treated, how they're communicated, how they're informed, because the tools for them to do their job is not just cool technology, you know, Microsoft Surfaces for all of the pilots so they can have all their maps and everything in the cockpit. And that. It's not just that. The tools they need is communication, direction, objective, and strategy, which is a very, very strong paramount of how we take care of our people. We have a lot of things. We have stock purchase programs. We have 401ks, all employee quarterly incentives on operational financial matrix. If the company's doing good, the employees should be rewarded for that. And that's a model we think has worked really, really well, particularly, I mean, I've only been there 15 years, but a lot of this happened and is timeless since long before I got there, and it's worked out very, very well. Okay. Second one is, you know, from my perspective, this is a little bit cliche, but it is paramount in an industry that's so competitive. You need to deliver the best operating and financial credibility, and you just have to do better than your competition. And you have to do whatever it takes, safely, with integrity, to cross that line. You know, get the ball over the goal line. If you have to bring in a few more offensive linemen and declare them as tight ends, bring in a couple more offensive linemen and declare them as tight ends to punch the ball over the goal line. We work so hard at what we do. The most important part, and sorry I used probably too many football analogies. You can work so hard to get clear down the field, but if you get on the 1-yard line, that's the one that really matters. And that's the hardest yard you're going to get out of the last 79 that you just went down the field on. So that's the biggest piece in my view. It's a competitive industry, and I'm going to show you some of the statistics. I'm going to be very transparent with you on this. But if you find yourself 4th and 1 and you have to score a touchdown, sometimes you just have to absolutely find a way to grit it over the goal line. And that's usually what happens in a highly competitive environment. Okay, now we're going to be honest. This is exactly what's happened this last quarter. I'm showing you with United and Delta how we did in our flight completion statistics for the first quarter. On United, we did extraordinarily well. I got to interpret a couple things from this slide because you may not know which airline is which. ExpressJet is our airline on the East Coast. They were the top in the first quarter. SkyWest was second to them, and if you can see those statistics, they were slightly below. That's right where we like to see them. You know, they'll trade. They'll go back and forth. Both of our airlines will go kind of bounce around, go back and forth. That, in my view, is where they have to be. Let's go over to Delta. Are we at the top? No. Somebody else is. Endeavor is at the top, and they are above both of our airlines, and that sometimes happens, that sometimes does not happen. But the level of effort to evolve and fix that is the thing that we spend most of our time on because this is so important. Now, Endeavor is a wholly owned entity at Delta. They're a great airline, but they are wholly owned by Delta, so Delta has the ability to put a lot of capital in the airline, and they have great people and everything there. But this is the type of stuff that we evaluate, we look at, and immediately when this report comes out, on a monthly basis, weekly basis, we actually track this by the day. I mean, our internal website, it's so cool. Our internal website, when a crew member or anybody logs on to our website, they have to when they go and do their trips. We have, across the top of our website, we have all of our operating statistics. And we have one operating statistic out there that shows when was the last time we canceled a flight. And it's a clock. Sometimes it's 3 hours, sometimes it's, 10 minutes. But there was a time 2 weeks ago when that clock said 7 days and like 24 minutes. Meaning we had gone 7 days without one canceled flight, which is really quite incredible. And what happens with that, what do you think happens with the people when they see that? They get passionate about it, and they start really, they're always focusing about it, but everybody is watching to see how far that's going to go before we cancel that flight. Later on that day, I went back, and it said 10 minutes. What do you think happened after that? The place like ignited on fire. what caused that cancel, after we went for 7 or 8 days. And it was something that was perfectly legitimate and may have been a safety issue with a part or something like that. But that type of competitive energy with really good people is what it's going to take for us, at least in our organization and wherever you go, to make sure you're the very best at what you do. Now I'm going to tell you why the advantages of being the very best. Okay. This goes to our financial credibility within the marketplace. We fundamentally have a thing throughout all of our company that says we want to be the partner and airline of choice, we want to be the employer of choice, we want to be the employer of choice, and we want to be the investment of choice as well. So those 3 things are not. It's hard to prioritize those things, but by the time you work through all of those things, they actually significantly contribute to each other. Today, our stock price is about $20 a share. About 18 months ago, it was $7 a share. Wall Street was not happy with us. Okay, we were, I think in 2014, I think that SkyWest Inc. is a holding company. We lost about $120 million in 2014. And so when Wall Street's not happy with you, that creates many, many problems that ripple through the entire organization. When your people are not happy with you, that creates problems that ripple through the organization. And when your customers and your partners are not happy with you, that does the same thing. So one thing that I've learned is you typically, and this may or may not be a good lesson, I've found in my career, you typically don't always get a promotion when things are rosy, right? You typically get a promotion when you're sent in to try to fix a problem. And that was the problem that I was facing in 2014. We had to do some things drastically different. We had made a couple of acquisitions, and we were by far the biggest fleet in the United States. We had 760 aircraft. The thing that we learned very, very quickly is that bigger is not better in this industry. Better is better, bigger is not better. There are some industries where it could be very well a main objective that bigger has more advantages of not being big. In our industry, we needed to significantly scale back what we were trying to do. Hopefully you can get a sense for what it takes to operate such a large fleet. And we had to scale it back significantly and get everything returned back to profitability. What that does is if you have all 3 of those things working with people, investors, and partners, you have to have capital and you have to have credibility to continue to go forward and develop your business model. And when you don't have all 3 of those things, it becomes extremely, extremely difficult. Okay, this is a little bit of a slide that we look at. I want you to kind of visualize this. Back in 2014, every single one of those boxes represents an aircraft. And we track the profitability of every single aircraft and our fleets that we have. In 2014, if you want to see the key here, green means that there are significant annualized earnings, meaning it's doing well. The contracts that we have them negotiated with and the circumstances which we're flying them and the partnerships that we have there are very good and it's producing very good profitability. Red is not good. That means it's losing significant money. White means white means that it's been removed. So if you take a look at the size of our fleet, and this kind of looks a little bit wide up here, the first thing that we were able to do when we had our recovery was to go back and take a look at which of our model works well, which contracts work well, which part of our fleet works well, and which doesn't. And if it doesn't work, what do you have to do? Get rid of it quickly, okay, as fast as you can. 2 years is an eternity with Wall Street today. So if you don't have something that's working, if you don't have a partnership that's working with your partner or your employees, you have to fix it immediately. Some of this stuff, if you come over here, we don't have many dark red anymore. We don't have a lot of dark red, but we still have some red here. And those require very, very tough decisions. We had to lay some people off. We had to close some bases. We had to put aircraft down. In the aviation industry, people want to fly planes. And one of the things we had to do is tell them to stop flying, because the more we flew, the more money we lost. And it was a very, very interesting dynamic to see that until all of a sudden they catch on that it's important to have cash flow, it's important to be profitable, and it's important to have sustainability. Because I'm going to go back to what our people really want. They want a sustainable and a predictable model. And if you're not making money in this world, there's no way that you're going to be able to take care of your people with a sustainable and a predictable message that they really, really want. Okay. I won't spend too much time on this. We get a lot of awards for our reliability. We get a lot of rewards for taking care of our people. But we're probably as widely recognized as a reliable airline as much as anybody else. And let me tell you where that helps. Aside from our people want to work for a reliable airline. You know, pilots want to come and fly a plane that is predictable. They know it's going to they know it's going to work. They know it's going to work well. They know their schedule that they're going to fly over the next 2, 3, or 4 days. Things are going to go well. Weather is something that we still can't control, and that's something that we have a lot of good predictability about. Everything outside of things that, you know, that God controls, we need to make sure we have a complete control of that. And from our people perspective, they love that. But from a vendor perspective, the people that are supplying our parts, the outside folks that are maintaining our aircraft, the manufacturers that are building our aircraft, they like predictability and stability as well. And if they have that, what are they going to do? They're going to give you a better price, and they're going to take care of you better because you're predictable and stable as well. It's a very big element of our entire industry to make sure we're the best at that. Okay. I love innovation. I'm not just a huge gadget guy, right? I mean, I love gadgets. I love discussing how innovation is going to affect the business. We're probably as innovatively creative as an airline as anybody else. We have signed contracts with Microsoft, and all of our pilots have a Microsoft Surface. And what we can do with the Surface with our employees associated with the airplanes is really, really cutting edge in how all of that communicates with pilots and our maintenance databases and everything. And few airlines are kind of headed in the direction that we are. But this is, in my view, I also think that innovation as an individual can be very dangerous. Innovation is one thing that they taught a lot when I was in college. But execution was not something I spent a lot of time writing papers about. And it's interesting because I had a conversation with one of my employees. It wasn't even probably, I'm guessing, probably about 4 weeks ago. He came in, an outstanding employee. You know, he's hungry. He wants more and more and more things and that type of stuff, which is great. But I said, so hey, look, so, you know, beyond getting past the conversation about how his life was and everything like that, which I'm mostly interested in, I said, so what do you think you're good at? You know, what do you think your main skill sets really, really are? And he told me, he says, you know, I'm just completely out of the box. I'm out of the box. I can look at things from several different views and that type of stuff. And that was his main selling point to me. And I'm like, that's great. I only need about 5% of that from you, though. I need 5% innovation, creativity, all that stuff. I need 95% execution from you, though. I need to know and predict that whatever you come up with and think, you're going to absolutely execute it. So I'm a little tired today because I had to stay up late last night with my 10-year-old boy who is a Stephen Curry fan. You know, so I'm sitting there, and he didn't hit his 400th three-point shot until late in the fourth quarter. Could we have got that done like in the first quarter so I could have gone to bed, right? But, you know, it's pretty amazing when you take a look at a guy like Steph Curry. You know, is he an innovative guy? I mean, he has literally redefined the NBA. Watch how guys guard him. They don't let anybody outside of like 3 steps from the guy when he inbounds the ball. Some guys, you know, you can pick him up at the half-court line. Steph Curry is so good at shooting three-point shots, they pick him up when he touches the ball right away. He did not out-innovate the game. He didn't do anything new in what he did in redefining how the NBA plays him and treats him. What he did was execute a shot that has been in the rule book for decades, okay? And he can do it better than anybody else. I fundamentally believe that there are much more opportunities in the business world if you out-execute somebody else or out-execute what's been done in the past, even though it's already been invented. If you can do it better, there's a lot more opportunities in the business world than coming up with something new. Now, you may come up with a new way to do what's been done for the last several years, but execution provides so much more than just straight innovation if you don't have execution. Innovation without execution is dead. Innovation without communication is dead. You have a lot of great ideas, but you can't follow through with them, and you can't communicate them to the right people. It's a big, big thing. Now, as much as we innovate and we're re-innovating the airline industry, it still comes down to applying all of that stuff and out executing everybody else. Okay. This is the airplane I was talking about a little bit before. This provides, next-gen compatibility, which what the FAA is doing with our air traffic system is absolutely amazing. They're investing billions of dollars in making sure that we do this whole thing more efficient. This airplane complies with the billions of dollars that the FAA is investing in our system more than any other aircraft being manufactured today. This is a bigger airplane. This is the first airplane we actually have engines down on the wings. So it looks like a bigger airplane. It carries 76 people. We have about 50 of them now, and we'll have a little over 100 by the time we get to the end of 2017. This airplane, by the time you buy the airplane and all the components that go along with it, costs about $34 million a piece. Okay, so not only are we reliant on our people, and that's clearly our biggest asset, it takes a lot of money as well to buy the airplanes and to execute on that plan. We buy them out of Brazil. They're manufactured in Brazil. And the innovation of applying that capital, that type of innovative product, makes our ability to be stable with our people that much greater. Customers love this airplane. We have some smaller airplanes. This is a very large airplane that carries about the same amount of people, and it's going in all the places that the people want. Producing that type of a product is good for so many reasons. Shareholders love it, people love it, partners love it. That's where most of our innovation comes from. How do we take the best product and apply it to our three key stakeholders to where everybody loves it? A plan where the people love it, the shareholders love it, and the partners don't love it isn't going to go anywhere. We have to have all three people on board when we make decisions to buy airplanes like this. Okay. One thing that we do, and then we'll wrap up and maybe have a couple of chances for some questions. What we do a lot of, and what I've done a lot with my career, is negotiating. Like I said, we have about 28 different contracts with 4 different partners. We have various contracts with employee groups, some union, some non-union throughout the United States. I'm not saying that you negotiate with the government and those agencies that we had before, but we do a fair amount of negotiation, when we have issues and how we work things out. If there's one thing that I've learned about negotiating, there's so many books out there on negotiating. A lot of them are talked about right now in the political environment that we have today. But if there's one thing that I've learned is that literally 95% of the negotiation is already done before you even get to the table. When we sit down with Delta or United or American and we're going to negotiate a contract to profitably fly an aircraft that costs that much money over a 12-year period. Okay, this is kind of high stakes because it's not just as an expensive airplane, it involves a lot of employees. Some of these negotiations are going to last, we're going to have to live with them for like 12 years. Going to the table without credibility would be absolutely disastrous. It's a lot like, if you're shopping for a car, and if you're shopping for a car and you just wander on the lot. You don't know what you want. You don't know, really, do you want, all-wheel drive, two-wheel drive, you want a truck, you want, whatever you want. Just wandering on the car lot is not the best idea because it becomes a little bit more emotional, But doing all of your research, understanding exactly what you want, why you want it, doing internet research of the pricing, doing internet research of all the, quality matrix. When you walk to the parking, or you walk to the lot to buy a car, it should be very, very simple. And if the terms aren't met, one of the best things you can do is turn around and walk off the parking lot. And that's okay. Don't be offensive about it, but turn around and walk off. There's some real value in some of those things. Because again, we have to take a lot of these things seriously. But the best thing that we have when we go to negotiate some of these contracts is great people, investors willing to give the right capital for the right scenario, and operating credibility with top operating performance in our back pocket when we go and have the conversation with them to make the negotiation a lot easier. If we had poor performance and we were at the bottom of that list that I showed you before, you know, it's not going to be a very good conversation. You may not even find where the table's at that day. You know, you may be wandering around wondering, where is this table? You have to create tables, and you don't create tables always by just picking up the phone and talking somebody else into showing up to the table. You got to earn it. You got to execute it. You got to be consistent with all the parties that are gonna get to there. Okay, these are some of the deals that we've done. You know, we've over the last year, it's been a flurry because part of our turnaround from not making money to making money this last year and hopefully having a great 2016 is involving a lot of things with all of our partners. Some we announce, some we don't announce. We've done deals with Alaska as of late, we've done deals with Delta as of late, and we also have done them with both American and as well as United. It's a flurry, you know, right now in this business environment. Oil prices are still relatively good. The mergers that our major carriers have gone through has been good for our industry. Up until the mergers of about, you know, 7 or 8 years ago, until all of these airlines were merging, the airline industry hadn't made a cumulative dime in its history. It was just losses and losses and losses. Finally, the industry has some stability, and there's demand for the product, and we're safer than ever before. I mean, it is good that airlines are profitable, so they have significant flexibility in investing in the right things to ensure that it's the safest mode of transportation in the world. So all of that's been great for us. Again, here's the summary of all the ones that I wrote up there. This isn't necessarily mutually exclusive. These are the ones that I've probably seen more of that have made more of an impact in changing my dynamic from when I left college to where I am today. I'm a little ashamed to say 20 years later next week. But it's been an outstanding journey. And I'll tell you what, business is fun. I mean, doing this type of stuff, Jerry Atkin did tell me at one point, he said, in the world of aviation, you have to get up in the morning and you have to be running. You either have to be chasing somebody or running from somebody. But either way, you got to get up in the morning and you got to start running. And from that perspective, it is an outstanding industry to be in. I'm not here to sell you on the industry, but my experience in business has been something that's been extraordinarily fulfilling for me. If I go back to that original slide that I showed on my background, that day on September 9th was a weird day for me and my wife to have that conversation. Some of the things I've shown you is what takes those moments in your career. Because look, I'm not going to lie to you, you're going to get kicked in the teeth when you get out of college. I mean, more than once. And how you respond to that, you know, with grit and work ethic and being able to be not just out innovate but out execute, you know, your competition and everybody else brings an enormous amount of not just satisfaction to me personally, but to see how satisfying it is to the people at your company and to the shareholders at your company and to the customers of your company. It's a very, very satisfying thing. Business is a fantastic part of this world and this life, and it's challenging and it's going to get more challenging, and that's okay. Because when we look at bright people like you, you're a lot brighter than I was when I graduated from college. You guys are absolutely up to the task, and I'm envious of what your careers are going to bring to you guys and how it's going to enrich your life. And with that, we may maybe time for maybe 1-2 questions. Is that okay?
Yeah, we have time.
Awesome. We'll take just a couple of questions if you have any.
Here we go. Here's the first question right here.
So I was listening to a report yesterday that said airline travel shifted over the last, I don't know, decade or so from substantially more business to personal or personal flights. Have you seen that, and has that helped you? How have you guys dealt with that?
So, you know, a long time ago when I first went to SkyWest, we were very focused on the business traveler because typically the business traveler we kind of thought would pay more money than what the leisure traveler would. Now I don't know what the difference is. I've heard the same report, and that does make sense to us. The way we fly smaller aircraft, you know, we don't go LA, New York. You know, that's a lot of business traffic. We go a lot to Jackson Hole, we go a lot to Aspen, we go to Monterey, we go to San Diego. We do go to a lot of leisure stuff. I can tell you that demand is as strong as I've ever seen it in 15 years. Granted, I went there in 2001. But the dynamics of what we do, from our business model, we don't necessarily focus on that, but we do coordinate with our major partners on what their focus is. And their focus is a little bit I think that they've seen the exact same thing. So more people are traveling casually, not just because of a business purpose, which is very cool, actually. It's good stuff.
I've got a question. You mentioned you're purchasing the new East 175s.
Yeah.
That is a huge investment. What type of research goes into that? Do you create a team to, because there's many product out there, a lot of product you could choose from. So how do you narrow that choice and decide this is where we're going to go and understand that this company is going to be able to deliver what you're after?
Yeah, so what the manufacturers do a lot of study about what customers want. That's not necessarily what our job is. I mean, they'll go, Embraer, who is in Brazil, they manufacture them in a place, San Jose dos Campos. It's between Rio and San Jose, Rio and Sao Paulo. And what they do is they do a significant amount of customer outreach on what they want. What's the seat pitch? How high should the roof be? They take all of those elements. Then the engineers have to combine that with everybody wants more space on an airplane, right? Everybody wants big windows. They want to lay back in a lazy boy while you're traveling anywhere you want to go. But you have to kind of combine that with their analysis of the aerodynamics of the aircraft and the fuel efficiency of the aircraft. This is an airplane that's a lot like a couple of the airplanes we have. It's the same seat configuration of the Bombardier 900. We wanted to go that pathway right now just for a little bit of diversity, because we have a lot of airplanes that have the same number of seats. Very expensive airplane. We do like a little diversity along the manufacturers, just to keep a strong balance. We kind of look at our fleet as a portfolio of risk and opportunity. And we did not have this airplane in our portfolio up until we first started to purchase this. We also have some options with Mitsubishi's making a new airplane. So part of our job is to stay on the forefront of what the manufacturers are making. And if we see a product that we like, then we have to invest some capital in that manufacturer. And we do kind of spread it out to see how things go in the future. But we rely on them to keep an eye on what the customers and the partners want. It's our job to make sure that we have everything on the back end to execute, whatever that is. That's why we have, 5, 6 airplane types that we operate today. It's a little more expensive to do that, but the opportunities with different sizes of fleet are worth it. So, okay.
Looks like we're done there. Let's give Chip Childs a round of applause.